Welcome to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. If at first you don't succeed at rigged prices and market manipulation, try again. Try again. Why not? The regulators don't care. The people you're defrauding don't care. Just keep banging away at it.
Yes, well, Max, we're continuing this theme of the numpties that are defrauded over and over again because nobody seems to care. But Keiser Report is dedicated to chronicling all of these crimes because one day when the Nuremberg-like trials happen, all of this will be evidence presented to the prosecution or to the hangman. UBS Precious Metals misconduct found by FINMA in FX probe. Misconduct, of course, is typically known as fraud or crime to the ordinary person. Of course, if you did these misconducts, you would be charged with a crime, so don't try it at home unless you work at a big bank. Switzerland's regulators found serious misconduct by UBS employees in precious metals trading, particularly with silver, as part of its review of the bank's foreign exchange business. Electronic chats played a key role in the improper conduct in foreign exchange and precious metals trading, the Swiss Financial Market Supervisor Authority, or FINMA, said in a statement. It found front-running when traders profit from advanced knowledge about a transaction expected to influence prices over client orders for silver.
Well, I'm completely changing my approach to this entire epidemic of fraud.
What are you going to do?
The bankers are committing serial fraud, and they are saying that, look, regulators don't stop us. Why should we stop? So I think I'm changing my entire approach to this. I think we got to go after the regulators. You know these wireless sex toys that they have? You can operate them wirelessly. I think all these regulators should be maybe implanted with some kind of weed whacker type device up their sphinx. And every time one of these market makers or traders commits a fraud, then they get a little weed whacking up their sphinx. You know, that'll get their attention. Until they regulate the fraud, until they figure out a deterrent to stop the fraud, let the weed whacking sphinx device keep whacking, and it burrows deeper and deeper. Pretty soon it'll hit a vital organ, I would imagine. But I think it's the regulators at this point. Forget the traders. They're going to keep stealing money. If you give a kid a big box of chocolates and say, you know, have all you want, they're not going to stop eating the chocolate.
Well, I think it was Napoleon who said something along the lines of politicians and regulator sorts will allow this to happen until the people force them to stop. So I think it's the people, too. The people don't seem to care. As long as their house prices are rising, that's what's kept them quiet, as long as their food prices are cheap, but those are rising. So let's see what happens. And now the regulator FINMA in Switzerland, what they said was that the traders engage in activities including sharing of information on orders, flows, and customers, as well as front-running and triggering of stop-loss orders. So that's why you said they pick a price. They know that all of their clients have a stop-loss order, i.e. sell at that price. So those are when you see the cascading and the silver price down, is they know that they've triggered that in order to pick up the price of that silver.
Yeah,
in this case.
There's a market price, and around the market price are these big stop orders from managers who are hedging their risk. And if you can trigger a market advance to trigger a stop order, you get a lot of free stock. Because right after you pick up the free stock, you know, the markets resume where they were before you manipulated the price. So it's a way to pick up some cheap stock. But again, the regulators, the FINMA, well, it sounds like smegma, they're the people that I think I'm focusing on now. I'm not focusing on the bankers anymore. I'm focusing on the regulators. And the regulators are regulated by the politicians. So I agree with the traders now. I'm now in the traders camp. I'm pointing the finger at the regulators now. Forget the traders. They're helping us point out the problem.
Well,
they're pointing the problem at the regulators.
But the bankers are the regulators because this is a self-regulation, a self-regulated inquiry. The UBS looked at itself in which this is what they found. So all of these Forex, LIBOR, they're having to investigate themselves.
Right,
so
but to allow that to happen is the responsibility of the regulators.
Yeah.
So every time it's like that movie, you know, It's a Wonderful Life, where the little angel gets his wings if he saves someone from committing suicide. Here, the little sphincter gets a weed whacker buzz every time a regulator lets a trader commit a Forex manipulation. You know, burrow into those vital organs. Whoever FINMA is, or Financial Conduct Authority, or SEC. These are the crooks.
Or
These
Department
are the
of
guys.
Justice.
Department of Justice.
Yeah.
Forget the traders. They're just kids. They're giving free money. They'll take it. It's the regulators now we're going after. I'm totally exonerating the traders. They're helping us point out the real problem. The regulators.
Okay, so let's look at what the regulators in UBS did in Switzerland. FINMA told Zurich-based UBS to give up profits of 134 million Swiss francs, which is about 130 million US dollars for the misconduct, and said bonuses for foreign exchange of precious metals employees globally will be capped at 200% of their basic salary for 2 years. Trading desk supervisors at UBS eventually prohibited front-running in the light of the obviousness and frequency of misconduct, FINMA said.
That's not a deterrent. That's not a deterrent.
No. So here their salary, they get to collect bonuses. They're only limited to 200% of that bonus, so a doubling of that. So of course they're just going to increase their salaries. And FINMA is like saying with gratitude, well, UBS was good to stop this front running when it became too obvious.
Well, look, let's make this a social networking enterprise. So every single regulator in every single major market will have their name on a social networking site. And every time any trader commits fraud, the social network votes or likes or thumbs up which one of these 50 or 60 major regulators gets the weed whacker sphincter treatment. Okay? We're going to simply take it from that approach. It's going to be a social network enabled wireless weed whacking sphincter up the organs on the regulators. There's 50 or 60 names of these regulators that we're going to go after and target because there's 150,000 traders. There's too many. But there's probably only maybe 60 or 70 major regulators. That's manageable to be marked for correction, to be corrected.
So these regulators, of course, they call it misconduct, and they also say that, and apologists in the media will say that it caused no harm. So we're going to look at some of the harm. Here's a tweet from Pedro da Costa, who covers the Federal Reserve for Wall Street Journal, and he said, recession brought suffering and lifelong risks to extra 619,000 children in Italy, 444,000 in France, and 2 million in Mexico, according to UNICEF. So, of course, again, just like it's misconduct when banks commit a crime, here it's recession when actually it was basically a grand larceny. It was grand theft.
Right, the kids are starving to death.
And their lifelong chances are forever altered because there are no jobs, so they have no experience, so they'll continue to live with their families and feed off the state forever. Because
they're willing
to
commit a pogrom, an extermination of children, for a few bucks.
And the other story of the consequences, remember, the mainstream media, the CNBCs of the world, the Fox News, say there were no consequences to these crimes, and that's why they should just pay a little fine. Here's a headline from The Economist. Wealth of America's top 0.1% is about to exceed that of bottom 90% for the first time since the 1930s. So either you believe that this 0.1% have become much better, smarter, more talented, much more vibrant and better than the bottom 90%, or there's something going on, or these crimes are enabling them to steal so much from the numpties, from the Muppets, from all the idiots out there that that those idiots deserve to be poor.
Well, imagine you're irrigating a field, you're a farmer, you have a source of water, maybe it's coming off a dam. The water comes to the field, and if it goes across the field in an equal distribution, the entire field reaps a bounty during the harvest. But these regulators, when the water gets to the field, they build regulatory siphoning devices, essentially, or redirection devices that allow all that liquidity to go into the top 0.1% and leave the 99.9% fallow or dry or empty or
That's
dead.
That's a very good analogy.
Yeah, so I'm saying the regulator is the point that we need to focus on. The bankers are by nature criminals, and we need some criminals in the system. That's the way humans are. But we can't let the criminals define the system. The only way we can stop it is by re-architecting the regulatory framework and doing it in an aggressive way, on an individual by individual basis.
Well, okay, you were an ice hockey player.
Yes.
Now, if the regulator, i.e. the umpire, whatever you call that.
The ref.
The ref, whatever. I played baseball, okay? If he were just like stepping in and not allowing you to hip check somebody, but allowing the other side to hip check you, what would have happened on the field.
Right. In the game of hockey, there's a tolerated amount of violence.
Yeah.
And that's part of the game. Just like in capitalism, there's a tolerated amount of a certain capitalistic violence where traders are very aggressive. And this is actually part of the system, and it's not damaging overall to the system unless you let the most violent element define the system. If ice hockey was nothing more than 60 minutes of slashing and pucks to the face, like Mark Carney, obviously, he's a Bank of England governor, and he was a goalie in an Ivy League school in America for a while. You can tell he's got the brain damage that almost every hockey goalie has. He can barely put a coherent sentence together, which is symptomatic of brain damage. And
but by the way, he's also
that.
come out this week and said that we're not going to have bailouts, we're going to have bail-ins. He's warning you already. So finally, on this headline of the cost, that there's one team on the ice hockey rink that doesn't have to ever sit out, whatever that line is, where they go behind the wall and they're on penalty, right? I thought you were going to come in with a word.
No, because I don't understand what you're saying. There's a line.
When you're calling,
the penalty box.
Yeah, penalty box. They're sitting in the penalty box.
That's
One
right.
team doesn't have to sit in there. Well, food costs eating into consumers saving at the pump as holidays near. So apparently, consumers in the U.S., all the headlines in the mainstream media are saying, "Woohoo! Gasoline prices are down in the U.S. This is going to save them $5 billion." Well, higher food costs are going to cost them $10 billion more, they say. So net, they're down $5 billion.
This is pump blindness, because people in America, the only contact they have with the economy is pump price for gas or petrol. And so if it goes down, they assume everything is getting cheaper. They don't factor in the whole list of things that they have to add up at the end of the month and notice that, in fact, prices are going up and they're getting slaughtered with inflation and shrinkflation, and everything that's not traded on an international market is going up in price because it's monopolized by cartels. So health and education, because they're not traded on a global exchange like oil is, these prices are being driven much higher because they're monopolized by local cartels.
And the average household in the U.S. spends 3 times more on their food than on petrol prices, or gasoline prices as they call them in America. So there you have it. That's the cost for that. But I think, finally with your regulator story, I think we need to combine it with the ice hockey story. So the Weed Whacker on ice.
Weed Whackers on Ice is the name of a new West End show, which is coming this Christmas. It's the Grinch who stole the Weed Whacker in time. Kids love it. Grandpa, bring the whole family right here at the West End in London. Boris Johnson will be there, completely naked, rolling around in a vat full of Marmite. So make sure you make reservations early for this. Stacy, we got to go.
Hip check.
Remember, I own the copyright on that. All right, stay tuned for the second half. A whole lot more.
I'm Abby Martin. The stories we cover here, you're not going to hear anywhere else.
Another big story that mainstream headlines seem to have
There's a
missed.
reason they don't want you to know.
Nothing in the report detailing the reason.
We should all be completely outraged.
Now let's break the set.
Most people think to stand out in this business, you need to be the first one on top of the story, or the person with the loudest voice, or the biggest ratings. In truth, to stand out in the news business, you just need to ask the right questions and demand the right answers. Question more.
Crosstalk rules in effect. That means you can jump in anytime you want.
welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Time now to turn to Alasdair Macleod of goldmoney.com. Alasdair, welcome back to the Keiser Report.
It's my pleasure, Max.
All right, Alasdair, Alan Greenspan, former Fed chairman, recently said that quantitative easing has failed and people should buy gold. Your thoughts? What's going on here?
Mea culpa. I think in one word. I mean, as chairman of the Fed, he changed his view, apparently, towards monetary affairs from his previous stance, because if you read his writings going back into the 60s, he was quite Austrian in his approach, if I can put it that way. Then he became part of the establishment, and now he's out of it. I think his book is a sort of, you know, putting the record straight a little bit.
Well, quantitative easing, I think, what I've been saying on this show for a number of years now, a number of academics are agreeing with me, quantitative easing causes the deflation. It doesn't fight deflation.
Well, it does, because what happens is that you are transferring wealth from savers to the banks, effectively, the banks and government. It's the ordinary people who are savers. And you know, if you're going to get the economy going, you want basically wealth creation, not wealth destruction.
Right, and these are banks that are, A, not lending the money, and B, engaging in fraudulent activity. HSBC, Barclays, Lloyds, Royal Bank of Scotland, fraud, 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 all fraud. So they're not lending, but they are manipulating LIBOR. They're manipulating Forex. They're manipulating gold and silver. And they're really the worst actors in British society. The Brits have an amazing capacity for indignity, I would say, because nobody seems particularly outraged by this serial criminal wave perpetrated in the city of London. Is it that stiff upper lip mentality, or is it just why is it like this?
I think it's ignorance is the only thing I can say. I mean, I met some people, foreign exchange brokers last night, and we were discussing exactly this point. They found it hard to see where the harm in this has been. And you know, so what they're doing is that, so, well, nobody got hurt, so why worry? I mean, this is complete nonsense. There have been allegedly criminal activities, and you know, if you engage in criminal activity, then you should be brought before the law.
Right. I mean, it's like Frederick Bastiat said: if you let plunder exist at the top of your society, expect plunder throughout your society. So here in Britain, with people engaged in rioting and with beheadings happening right here on British soil, that's directly related to the banksters, who are the role model for terrorists. And so David Cameron is basically saying, well, if the terrorist makes me money, I'm for it. But if somebody in Woolwich gets their head cut off, well, that's so bloody and nasty. I don't like that. Ew. But he caused it. He had his hand on the knife. But anyway, forget David Cameron. He's such a waste of time. Let's talk about silver. It's been obviously manipulated. Finally, it's come out in the public record that's been manipulated. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, it's both precious metals, main precious metals. It is beginning to emerge that all is not right in the markets. Earlier on this year, we had Deutsche Bank as forced to make returns to BaFin, the German regulator, about its precious metals dealings. This is widely reported in the press. Nothing has come of that yet, except that Deutsche Bank withdrew from the silver fixing process. They tried to sell their gold seat without success, which tells you an awful lot, because if other banks aren't prepared to buy a prestigious position in the market, then there is something seriously awry with the whole thing. So I think that a lot has yet to emerge on this, Max, and what we have seen with LIBOR and FX is part of a process which I think has not finished. I think we're only partly of the way through it. To what extent precious metals will feature down the road, I don't know. I believe it should feature, but we do have a problem, and that is that the FCA is part of the Bank of England.
Financial
and the
Conduct Authority.
Exactly, and the Bank of England is the ringmaster for the London Bullion Market Association. So there are, I think it's fair to say that the Bank of England is the provider of liquidity for
right,
the
so
gold
in
market.
the case of silver price manipulation, it's a question of basically wash sales, where you're flooding the market with simultaneous buys and sells to guide the price lower. So if you stripped out the manipulation in the silver market, and now we know unimpeachably that the silver market's been manipulated. We have Andrew Maguire was giving testimonial, first-hand evidence of this. He's been completely validated now, that what he was saying is true about manipulation, HSBC and JP Morgan. Now we have another strand in this case, totally proving that if you, my question is, manipulation, where would the price of silver be if, you know?
It's a very good question, Max. I mean, we don't know the answer. Part of the price, and I think a substantial part of the price, is due to people's attitude towards silver as a whole.
But that's guided by manipulation. It's propaganda.
Well,
if I manipulate the price of something down, people say it must not. It's worth less, so they dump it. It's price propaganda.
Yeah.
This is the new world of propaganda. It's not like 50 years ago where, you know, you had propaganda engineered by images on and certain you know, nationalistic tendencies that were stoked. Now it's price propaganda. So they want paper to be valuable, so they manipulate the price down lower, and people think that that's the real price, so they dump it.
Well, I think the problem with differentiating between vested interest in the market, which is something which is reasonable and is part of the market, and manipulation, you cannot actually tell the difference between the two. I mean, what is the position of China, for example? China is a major consumer of silver because she is the largest manufacturer of solar panels. She is probably the only country which has a stockpile of silver. Now, you could argue that it's in her interest to keep the price of silver down so long as she's exporting solar panels. I mean, we just don't know, and it's therefore impossible to untangle where that genuine vested interest exists, how it translates into the market in terms of actual order flow.
But you just said
and
that
manipulation.
Quantitative easing is transfer of savings to speculators.
Well,
Just
yes.
Transfer of hard-earned money to gangsters and terrorists in the city of London.
I didn't.
So,
No, you said about the gangsters.
I said that.
You
Alasdair
said about the
Macleod didn't
gangsters.
call them terrorists.
No.
However, manipulating the price of silver has the same effect because silver and gold are instruments of savings.
Well,
Just
if you manipulate the money, then you are by definition manipulating every market. It's actually as simple as that, because you are changing the denominator of everything that you're pricing things in, as it were. So, I mean, you don't know what the dollar of today is
my point
compared
is,
to the dollar tomorrow.
vested interest, though, should be what savers have a vested interest.
Savers have a vested interest. Manufacturers have a, sort of producers have a vested interest. Consumers have,
Sure,
all the
I'm
rest of it.
manufacturing solar panels. I have a vested interest in having price of silver lower. But if I'm a saver, I would want my interest rates to reflect the not being manipulated down because I'm a saver. I want my precious metals to reflect the non-manipulated price because I am a saver. And from capitalism comes from capital. You can't have capitalism without capital. And 0% interest rates and quantitative easing, it's not capitalism.
It's completely destructive. On that point, I completely agree. But when it comes to silver and gold and all the rest of it, manipulating the quantity of money does, in effect, undermine the true market relationship between buyers and sellers in every market. So it must also be true of gold and silver.
But it's being manipulated, and I would posit that this is done to propagandize the interests of certain factions within society that are, in the case of the City of London, we now know that they are serial fraudsters and that the bank does nothing to deter that. Even now, the papers today, after the latest Forex scandal, is saying that there's no deterrent, no fines are deterrent because they either write the fines off or it's a profit center. They can turn the fines into a profit center. There's no deterrent.
It's a cost of doing business. I mean, banking has got to be the only industry where you get fined something over $50 billion in 1 year and no heads roll in management. I mean, it's quite extraordinary. Have you seen that before? I can't think of any other industry. I mean, if let's say Union Carbide poisoned a whole load of Indians, which they did with Bhopal, heads rolled.
British Petroleum in the Gulf of Mexico
Heads rolled, exactly.
Tony, what was his name? He ended up going to another shop.
Absolutely.
Okay,
yes.
but it's same kind of pollution in the. Let's move on because these guys.
Okay.
All right, so gold, silver, copper, and other commodity prices are plunging as it were 2008, and yet equity and housing markets continue to hit all-time high. This would seem to be. Is this the plan?
It's bizarre. The plan certainly is to elevate the value of investment assets generally. I mean, of that there is no doubt. Bond yields are where they are for a reason. Equity markets are where they are for a reason. The Japanese just actually go into the market and publicly say they are intervening. That's probably the only difference between the Japanese approach and the Western approach. But by pumping up all those assets, there is one asset that is left behind, and that is gold. So it tells me that everything is skewed, and in fact skewed very, very badly.
Yeah, I mean, if a Philip Patek watch can go for $22 million, if an Andy Warhol can go for $150 million, if strawberry-colored diamonds are trading at all-time highs, and gold is down over the past 4 years, Gold's a
doesn't-
precious metal.
it
The
doesn't
word
make any
precious
sense.
goes with the
Exactly.
metal. Why is it down?
Exactly.
It makes no sense.
It is the feedstock.
Why is this happening?
If you could say it is the feedstock for art, if you like. You've just said that, you know, art prices are through the roof. The base material for art, base is the wrong word, but you know what I mean. The precious material for art hasn't gone
Right, so
up.
if people want to participate in this jerry-rigging of the markets, they can't buy an Andy Warhol for 150 million, but they can buy gold for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, 10,000 pounds.
Precisely.
And they could participate in the central bank's malfeasance and Mark Carney's criminal behavior, in a sense. They could participate, but not even allowing them to participate. They're just slaughtering them.
I think the broader point, Max, is that if you are worried about all the manipulation of money that central banks in the West indulge in, it's not just in the West, it's everywhere, then the one way of getting out of that, of protecting yourself against that, an insurance if you like, an insurance policy is to hold gold and silver outside the banking system.
Right. Okay. We got about a minute left. I want to talk about Ukraine because we've talked about it a few times.
Yep.
And Ukraine is the aggressor, along with NATO, pushing east, violating everything that came before it under George Bush I, Ronald Reagan, in terms of where NATO's entry would stop the border. And the media, talk about propaganda, keeps pushing this line that Russia's sending troops to Ukraine. However, there's no satellite imagery, there's no evidence of it. They have a UN meeting, they say Russia's the aggressor, but it's like they're talking out of their bottoms, you know. So this can't end well either. I mean, the West, the United States, looks like the biggest frickin' monkeys in the world at this point. I mean, what's going to happen? Because now China and Russia are running away with it. They're like, America, who needs those monkeys? They're with, France.
Well, over the years, we've talked about the relationship between Russia and China and how it's embodied in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We're seeing that coming together. All the major deals are now being done between the members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization.
Shouldn't Britain be aligning with the winners, China and Russia, instead of tying their boat to a sinking ship, America and France?
That's a very good point. But I think, unfortunately, the establishment thinks in terms of special relationships with the United States.
Put some banks and terrorists in jail and
align.
align yourself with the winners. This country's going down the tubes. You're going to end up with Nigel Farage in number 10 Downing Street.
Well, I think that's a bit of a long shot at this moment in time, but anyway.
Okay. Well, we're going to have to leave it there. Alasdair Macleod, thanks again for being on the Keiser Report.
That's my pleasure, Max. Thank you.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacy Herbert. I'd like to thank our guest, Alasdair Macleod of goldmoney.com. Talk about storing gold outside of the banking system. That's where you do it. If you'd like to get in touch, tweet us at Keiser Report. Until next time, bye, y'all.